Good day, viewers. Today, let's tackle about the Japanese occupation of the Philippines on 1941 to 1945. So this report will highlight the key events that happened during the Japanese occupation. So let's start with the first one. Our first key event is the outbreak of war and the initial Japanese advancement. The decade of relative peace in the Philippines ended abruptly with the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. This was swiftly followed by the bombing of the key Philippines military installation, including Clark Airfield, Nichols Airfield, and Sangley Point, aiming to propel American power in the Pacific. The Philippines, as an American colony, was immediately drawn into World War II. The Commonwealth government, anticipating Japanese expansion, had already enacted the National Defense Act, establishing a combined Filipino and American military force under General Douglas MacArthur, known as the United States Armed Forces in the Far East, or USAFE. However, the European the European the Europe First policy adopted by the US and Great Britain meant that the Pacific theater received fewer resources, leaving the Philippines vulnerable. The Japanese invasion began with the landings in northern Luzon, namely Vigan and Apari, on December 10, 1941, followed by Davao, December 20, Lingayen, December 24, and Lamon Bay, December 24. The Commonwealth government evacuated to Corridor, and USAFE forces retreated to Bataan. The Japanese invasion began with landings in. So as we can see here, this is the picture that of the bombing way back on 1941 in Manila. Manila was declared an open city on December 26, yet still suffered bombing raids, as I have shown earlier. President Manuel Quezon's term was renewed on December 30 amidst the ongoing conflict. Lourdes Reyes Montenolas Mimyor, breaking the silence, offered a poignant personal account of the war's beginning. At first, the war had been an exciting novelty for us. It meant only a timely interruption to examination. When we acquired what was going on, we were told that the Pearl Harbor has been bombed. War had been declared by the Americans. This meant that the Philippines was also at war. This highlights the initial naivete. Now, the second key topic that we're going to discuss for today is about the fall of Bataan and the death march. Intense fighting in Bataan lasted for 3 months, with Filipino and American soldiers enduring relentless air attacks and naval blockage. So back then, the Filipino and American soldiers was trapped. The only way they could do is to fight. But did they fight till the end? Let's see about that. So, here, the surrender of Bataan on April 9, 1942 was announced via Yusafe broadcast station in Malenta Tunnel, so they surrender. A message pinned by Captain Salvador P. Lopez and broadcast by Lieutenant Norman Reyes. This surrender marked the beginning of the infamous Bataan Death March, a brutal forced march of a prisoner of war from Bataan to San Fernando. Earlier, we'll discuss how far that is and how many days it lasted to march, for them to march, resulting in countless deaths from exhaustion, starvation, and dehydration. The Bataan Death March took place from April 9 to April 17, 1942. The march was forced march of American and Filipino prisoner of war from Mariveles and Bagak, Bataan to Capas, Tarlac, Luzon Island. The march was roughly 65 miles or 105 kilometers long. That is why it resulted to countless deaths and wasted life of Filipino and American soldiers back then. A primary source described the fall of Bataan powerfully captured the emotional tool. Bataan has fallen. With heads bloody but unbowed, they have yielded to the superior force and number of the enemy. Bataan has fallen, but the spirit that made it stand, a beacon to all the liberty-loving people of the world, cannot fall. These passages emphasize the resilience of the Filipino and American soldier despite their defeat. Now for our last and third topic about the Japanese occupation in Philippines is the Japanese occupation and the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. So, let's dive into it. So after the fall of Bataan, as we can see, the Japanese soldier and their purpose had prevailed by occupying the Philippines. Following the fall of Bataan Corridor, the rock fortress was relentlessly bombed, culminating in the surrender of the entire USAF forces on May 6, 1942 under General Jonathan Wainwright to the General of USAF surrendered to the General of Japanese soldier, namely General Masaharu Huma. The Japanese occupation aimed to establish the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, a concept promoting Asian self-sufficiency and independence from Western powers under Japanese leadership. However, this ideal was largely a facade for Japanese imperial ambitions. In the Philippines, the Japanese focused on agricultural production, particularly cotton, but this initiative largely failed due to various factors including lack of skill, transportation issue, and food shortage. General Homa's address to the Filipino people on August 3, 1942 attempted to justify their occupation and promote the Co-Prosperity Sphere. The ideal of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere is to establish, under the spirit of universal brotherhood, a firm and enduring structure by consolidating Asia from the Asians. However, He also acknowledged the Philippines' rule as an American enemy and emphasized the need for Filipinos to abandon Americanism and embrace their original racial characteristic. This reveals the inherent contradiction between the proclaimed ideals and the reality of Japanese imperialism. The Japanese occupation of the Philippines was a brutal period, marked by significant loss of life and suffering. While Japanese presented the occupation as a liberation from Western colonialism, the reality was one of oppression and exploitation. The experiences of Filipino people during this time remain a crucial part of the nation's history and a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. The primary sources cited in this report provide evalu- invaluable insight into the life experiences of those who endure this difficult chapter in the Philippine history. And I think that will be all for the Japanese occupation of the Philippines back on 1941 to 1945. Thank you for listening.